Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to blend out your eyeshadow. If this is something that you struggle with, I show you from lightest to darkest. We are going to do this eye makeup look right here. I show you all the brushes, all the techniques that I use. This is very beginner friendly. So if you want to see how I blend out my eyeshadows, then just keep on watching. The first thing you want to do is go in with an eye primer. So this is really preference. You can do a concealer, you can do a kind of cream eyeshadow, you can do a non-tinted primer. Honestly, just whatever you want to do. Just going with a primer really allows you to even out that base. And if you have oils on your eyelids, it kind of evens that out and the eyeshadows won't cling to that oil. My primer of choice today will be the Fenty Beauty eye primer. And I'm just going in with a light layer all over the lid. So with the clear primers, I find that they work best when you let them set for a minute because they get a little bit tacky, kind of like how your face primers do. And then I'm just going to blend that out with a brush. With your primer, you want to make sure to get all into that crease. Anywhere that you're going to blend that eyeshadow, you want that primer. For the sake of the video, we're going to use a pretty neutral eyeshadow palette, so you can use whatever you have to do this look. I'm going to be using the Juvias Place Coffee Shop palette, and here is what that looks like. So I know that this eye primer is ready when it starts to get tacky. If you've used the e.l.f. Power Grip face primer, it's a similar concept, but I can feel like when I blink that my eyelid is very sticky. So when you're doing your eyeshadow, the way that you apply and the order that you apply the shadows do play a really big difference. So if you want super pigmented eyeshadow but takes a little bit more time to blend, you want to start with your darkest colors first and then work your way to the lightest. If you want a very blended, diffused, maybe you're a beginner type of look, then I would start out with the lightest shade and then work your way up. I'm gonna take the matte cream shade that's in the palette. So again, if you are a beginner with blending your eyeshadow, applying a kind of matte shade similar to your skin tone in your crease is gonna help a lot with your blending. You can also do a translucent powder. You just don't want to apply a lot of this because you still want the eyeshadows you put on top to have pigment. So I'm just taking a flat brush. This is a Sigma E60, and I'm just putting that from the inner corner to the outer corner. Like I said, anywhere I'm going to apply that eyeshadow, I'm gonna put this color. So my lightest shade for this look is gonna be this color right here. So I typically use one of two brushes for this step. This one is from the Morphe and Jaclyn Hill brush collection. It's a very large fluffy brush. You can see it's like the entire size of my crease. But most people don't have that much eye space. I'm going to use my other favorite, which is the Sigma E35. You can see it's still fluffy, but it's a little bit smaller. So it's going to allow me to diffuse that color out, but it's not going to end up all over my face. And here's a side by side of the two. When you're picking up your eyeshadows, you should never go in and start to swirl. I'm just going to tap on the tip of that brush like that. That is all the eyeshadow that you need. If you feel like you get too much eyeshadow on your brush, you can just kind of pat it and the excess will kind of fly off. So what I'm going to do is I want to apply this color into my crease. I'm going to do little patting motions to first lay the color down from inner corner to outer corner. And then I'm going to start doing back and forth motions to blend it out. And you can see I don't have a lot of product on my brush because I don't want to start out with a lot of product because then I'm going to spend more time blending and it's going to end up all over the place. You can see we've got a nice light wash of color. I'm going to do that same thing again. I got a little bit more product on there. So when I first place my brush, I'm always placing it towards the outer corner because I don't want it to be the most pigmented here. I want it to be the most pigmented out here. And then I start to bring it inwards. So again, doing that patting motion first and then starting to blend. And where we lay down that cream color first, it's just going to blend like a dream. And you can also see where I'm placing my brush, I'm not like forcing it down. You just want to be using the tip of the bristles of your brush. So now we have a nice seamless blend, and honestly you can do that as many times as you want to get it built up to the pigment that you want. So now that I'm looking forward, I do want this up a little bit higher. So we're going to do that same thing, pat it and then blend it. Just because I have a lot of eye space in my crease, so I like to take these colors up pretty high. Now you can see we have a nice smooth transition. Now I'm going to take this shade right here. The darker the color, the smaller the brush should be. So for that next color, I'm going to take a Sigma E25 brush. So again, here's a side by side. So here is that E35 brush we use in our crease, and then an E25, so it's a little bit shorter. It's a little bit more pinched, but it's wide when you turn it this way. This will just allow me to get a little bit more control directly in the crease and not diffuse it as much as that first color. And same thing as that first color, you can see that the eyeshadow is just on the tip of that brush. So what I like to do with this eyeshadow brush is same thing. I place it directly into my crease. You can see I have it kind of long ways. This would be like up and down. This is side to side. I'm kind of first placing it in the crease, doing those pressing motions, and then back and forth to bring it inwards. So again, most of the pigment's out here, and then I'm bringing it inwards. And then as I start to blend it out, I'm actually going to tip my brush on its side. That way I can bring this color up a little bit higher. I'm just doing back and forth motions. Again, just using the tip of that brush. And now I'm just getting a little bit more and doing that exact same thing. But you can see I'm keeping this brush just low down into my crease. When I want to blend everything back out, I'm going to go back with that first brush to diffuse all of the edges. I'm going to go in with that first color a little bit more right here just to further blend it out. And I'm blending it up to kind of the tail of my brow. And then now I'm going in a little bit more with that second shade, again, just to kind of bring it up further with my eye shape. So another reason I like this brush is it does have a flat side. So this is what I like to use on the outer corner. So I took that second shade and I packed it on the flat side. And while I'm looking down, I'm going to press that on that outer corner, and I'm going to blend it up into the crease where we applied it a minute ago. And then I'm going to start buffing out the edges to make sure it's nice and seamless, and then go in with my first brush to blend it all together. Now we're going to make this a little bit darker, and I'm going to be using a different brush. All right, so here's all three brushes compared, so you can see our original fluffy brush, the second one that was a little bit smaller that we used for still fluffy blending, but it's a little bit more concentrated, and then now we have this one. This is a Sigma E45. I like to use this one especially on like that outer corner where I want it to be a little bit darker, but it's not as fluffy. It's a little bit more dense, so you'll see what I do with that one. And for that, I'm going to take this shade right here. So here was that second shade we used, and here is the darker color. So I applied that eyeshadow on the side of the brush, kind of like we did with that E25, and I didn't realize I wasn't recording, but all I've been doing is just packing it on the outer corner. This brush is the perfect shape for this step. I'm packing it and blending it inwards, but not as far as that second shade we used. And this one, where it comes to a point, I can blend that up into the crease very, very easily. So now that I have that product on the tip of the brush, I'm going to look forward and bring that into that crease, but it's going to stay defined because we're using a pointed side of a brush. Okay, now to blend that out in the crease, I'm going to go back in with that E25 brush and just blend everything out. There's no product on my brush right now. I always say, but if you go back with your old brushes that you were using, it's just going to make the blending process a lot easier if you just kind of go back and forth, because if I kept blending with that other color, that darker shade is going to end up higher and higher, which I don't want. Now for our darkest color, I'm going to take this one right here. I have been raving about this brush for years. This is the Sigma E36. It is super tiny. I'm going to show you all the brushes compared. Okay, here are all the brushes so far, so you can see the difference in size from that first brush to this last one. This one, if you have hooded eyes or you like more detailed work with your eyeshadow, I'm telling you this is the best, because it's still fluffy, but it is so tiny in comparison. Like, look at that. So this is what we're going to use for our darkest color. You can keep this color just on the outer corner. I'm going to take it up to the crease a little bit just to kind of show you what that looks like, but I have the product on the tip of the brush just like I've been doing, and I'm looking down into my mirror, and I'm first going to start by stamping, and I'm doing like small little circular motions for this. And you can see it's already like blending itself out, but I'm doing very, very little pressure for this. I'm going to get a little bit more and do that same thing. I'm going to keep this one more towards the lash line, and I'm bringing it in just a little bit too. So if you wanted to bring that black up into the crease, you could just kind of look down and do that with that brush. But since we already have those previous colors there, those are just blending so easily, and you're not getting that like stark line of black in the crease. I'm going to keep this look matte just because we want to really focus on that blending. So I'm going to take that first cream that we used in the like lid area before we applied our shadows, and I'm going to pack that on the lid on that inner half. So with that Sigma E25 and that first color that we used, I'm just kind of overlapping that. And we're going to start using all those colors to create a gradient. So you can see it made like very little difference, but it all works out in the end. And now with that second color that we used, I'm going to take that a little bit closer to that outer corner. And for this, I'm just doing stamping motions because I don't want to kind of muddy all the colors together. And with that Sigma E45 brush, I'm taking that second darkest color and packing that on the outer corner, but not on the very, very outer corner. So you can see what we're working with right now. Next, I'm going to show you how I blend the lower lash line. I like to use the exact same technique of working with my lightest colors up to my darkest. I'm going to be using a Sigma E25 brush. You can just wipe off one that you were already using, but I did just grab another one for this purpose. With that eyeshadow applied to the tip of the brush, I'm just going to look up and kind of press that on the lower lash line. I do like a pretty smoky lower lash line. If you don't, you could just do a pencil brush for this step. But once I have it pressed in, I'm just going to do back and forth motions to blend it out. And same thing with this. As your color gets darker, your brushes should get smaller. So now with a Sigma E30 pencil brush in that second shade, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to stamp it. And I'm going to take this about 2/3 of the way in. So the lighter color went all the way to the inner corner. And same thing with this, the darker that we get, the less I'm going to bring it inwards. I'm just going to look up, and whenever I want to build it up, I'm just going to get a little bit more product. And I want to make sure that this starts to connect on that outer corner. And then with that last brush, I'm just going to buff it out. And now with a Sigma E20 brush and that second darkest shade, I'm going to pack this on the outer half of the lower lash line. I'm kind of stamping it right here to make sure it blends to the outer crease. Otherwise, there's kind of like a disconnect. Kind of pressing that in. And then with my pencil brush with no additional product, I'm going to blend the edges of that. Okay, now with a Sigma E15 flat definer brush, I'm going to pack that darkest color on the outer third. Again, making sure to connect it on the outer corner, and then you can go in with your previous brushes to kind of buff that out. And now with that Sigma E25 brush, I'm going to diffuse all of the edges. I'm dipping back into that first crease color we used just to further help with the blending process. And here are the three brushes I used on my lower lash line. So we had that pencil brush. This is a shading brush, but it's really short and dense. And then this is a flat finer brush. They all serve different purposes. With that pencil brush, I feel like I need a little bit more darkness right here just to make sure it blends well with that lower lash line. I'm just taking a little bit more of that darkest color and kind of patting it. I'm just going to clean up my concealer, do my mascara and lashes, and I will show you what everything looks like completed. So I just put on my lashes and here is the entire look completed. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of back to basics sort of video. Let me know what you want to see in the comments and I will see you in my next one.